a transcript. I'm going to go through the questions that I sent, and then I looked at some of the stuff from Lynn Marie's transcript, which was really interesting and gave me an idea for some other questions. But so this is Marcus Widenor. It's the 4th of January. I'm here with Tom Thede, who's the president of the Weyerhaeuser IAMW local over in Springfield. And he's about to retire. We wish him congratulations on that. Why don't we start by just tell me your name, the community where you currently live, where you were born, and what year you were born.
Okay, so my name is Thomas Thede. I currently reside in Eugene, Oregon. I was born in Libby, Montana in 1958.
1958, okay. And you're from a family that's been in the industry, right? As your dad wasn't your dad a road grader for Weyerhaeuser?
So my dad, like I said, originally we're from Montana. My dad worked for a company in Montana, and my mother and my father were in the process of separating, and so he was looking to move out of the area, and he heard Weyerhaeuser was hiring. He went to Longview, Washington, to apply, and they said, well, we're not currently hiring here, but they're hiring in Springfield, Oregon.
Right.
And so he came down here, and of course, as the process goes, you don't hire on as a grader operator or a specific job. Back then you started boots on the ground and stuff. And he said, well, I'm really not interested in that. They say, well, we really need, probably need you to be doing grading roads, but it might take a little while. Well, it didn't take very long at all.
Mm-hmm.
So he came on as a grader operator, but that didn't last very long there because they needed log truck drivers, and he was looking for something that was, paid a little bit more than construction and stuff. So he went on to become a log truck driver.
Right. And so your dad didn't ever have to be a choker setter?
No.
Or something like that? Okay. But when you started, how about you? When did you fall? I guess my question is, do you think, as you look back on this, do you think of this as like a family job, that something that got passed on in your family, or was it just an accident?
Well, it was kind of an accident, really, because the company I was working for before I went to work for Weyerhaeuser, they were in the process of downsizing and closing the Eugene facility where I worked here. And so I either had to move to Portland or Seattle or find a new job.
Right.
And so I chose not to move, and I was just over at my dad's house one day, and he came home. He says, hey, they're looking for choker setters. You want to set chokers? And I thought to myself, well, I could probably do that for a little while till I found something different. And 37 years later, here I am.
Right.
So it wasn't something that I anticipated doing, but it just kind of happened.
But nobody wants to stay a choker setter for very long, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And so there's kind of a hierarchy of jobs that you move through, but you moved pretty quickly from that into were you were on the construction, the road construction crew?
Yes, I was. So my goal, of course, is with everybody else, is the quickest path off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And happened to be dump truck driver came open.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied for that, and I was fortunate enough to get that, and so I was on construction for, I'm thinking, about a year and a half.
Right.
And of course, once you're in construction, you're either in logging side of it or you're in transportation, which transportation was the dump trucks and the log trucks.
Right.
So once you're in the dump trucks, then you fill in on log truck. So they just kind of, when guys are on vacation, when they're sick or whatever. And so, of course, I was third guy on the pecking pole on the dump trucks, but it went pretty fast. There was several guys that that left. And so, yeah, it didn't take long. It was about a year and a half, I think, before I went to log truck.
Right. And so you hired on a warehouser. It was right before the 86 strike?
Yes, I hired on in October of 85.
85.
Yeah.
And let me ask you did you have any special training on the job, or how did you learn? I mean, driving is kind of a core skill that maybe you had before, but no doubt there were special things that you needed to learn. Did you learn from another worker, from management? Did they have a training program? How did you learn your job?
Well, usually you just got in with another driver, and
Yeah,
he would, kind of show you the ropes, and then you go from there. The old saying was, when you're learning how to drive truck, is you can't find them, grind them.
yeah,
So you just kind of go through the process, and yeah, it's just kind of on the job training is what it
yeah,
is.
right,
They get the basics with a guy for, a few days, and then they turn you loose.
yeah. And could you describe for me, let's see, were you still working on the job when you became president, or you were full-time president of the union?
Yes, so
Yeah,
I became president of the union back in May of 2014. And of course, I'd been driving log trucks since like 91. So
yeah. And so before you became full-time union president, can you kind of walk through what your day would have looked like as a driver, a typical kind of day, what the work would look like?
just a typical day. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so basically the night before, of course, you get the schedule. Usually you get it, with modern technology. They'd send it to you on your phone where you get the schedule. And so you kind of know what the plan is for the next day, where you're going to go, what time you're out, what numbers are in the string of the trucking. And then, you show up in the morning, and you do your 15-minute, what we call 15-minute safety walk around. You inspect the truck, and make sure that everything is in working order and stuff. And you fire the truck up, and you have it warm up for a little bit, and then you just, you go out in the order that you were scheduled out, and wherever you're scheduled to go. And that was on a day-by-day basis. It was, sometimes you worked on the same job 4 or 5 days in a row, and sometimes you'd bounce around. So it's just, learning where, the different roads are. And of course, I've worked here for a long time, so I know the road system pretty well.
Yeah.
You just go out, and you get your loads that you can get, and then of course, then the end of your day. But
And
usually
they would
it's,
all come back, they would all come back to the central yard there in Springfield.
Yep,
Or,
yep.
yeah,
So depending on where you delivered your wood, I mean, there's mills all over the place, depending on what you got as to where you delivered it. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you just come back to the marshaling point, and
right. So
end
you
of your
might be
day.
delivering to Cottage Grove or any number of mills, not just the Springfield sawmill.
Yeah, and a lot of, we go to outside mills as well,
Uh-huh.
Northwest Hardwoods. There's a lot of other companies that we deliver Roseburg Forest products.
Oh,
So it
okay.
just, Douglas County Forest Products, it's usually within, I don't know, we like to say the circle of within 100 miles is where you're going to be delivering your wood. And it just
Right.
depends on who's the most for it, basically.
And so the most contact that you would have with other employees would probably be the people loading you up and then unloading you on both ends. That's where you would have most. Otherwise, you're in your truck by yourself.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was curious, reading that transcript about the differences between some of the different people in the local union, and there's so many different jobs. And when you started, there were a lot of loggers, but the loggers basically went away over between 85 and today. Does Weyerhaeuser still have any loggers, or are they all contracted out?
No, we do. We do. Of course, the camps are getting smaller. Back 86 strike in Springfield, what we went from is we had 180 loggers and truck drivers in Springfield. And when we came back from strike, we had 90. They basically cut the workforce in half.
Yeah.
In that strike. And then since then, we have logging in Springfield still. They downsized through this last bargain. They took one side out. So we're probably going to have 25 to 30 employees in Springfield.
Right.
We have a small camp down in Coos Bay on the coast that's got 10, I believe. And then Snow Peak, which is in the Lebanon area, we have a small camp there. And I think there's around 15 or 16 in that camp.
Right. So Weyerhaeuser still does logging, but there's also a fair amount of contract logging that they use to.
Majority of the logging is done with contractors. We don't have any towers. We don't have any yarders at all.
Now, when you think about the membership, and you were president of this diverse group of people, you had some loggers, you had people in construction, you had the people in the mills, you had some skilled trades people who were doing more skilled work than people pulling 2x4s off the line. How would you describe like the culture of the industry? Were there different? I mean, your job was you had a really different way of looking at the company, say, than a guy working in the mill, do you think?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
how would you describe the different kind of people in the local union by the jobs they did?
Well, in a mill setting, of course, you're relying on other people.
Yeah.
Working side by side, and technology has changed over the years drastically. And, that really hasn't affected log trucking so much as it has the mills.
Right.
Fewer people with modern technology. You got fewer people doing, basically the same amount of jobs and relying on the more sophisticated equipment to do the jobs. But with, that's the one thing I liked about my job with driving log truck. I'm basically independent. I'm out there, doing my job, and that was what intrigued me about doing that. Was just really, they just, I go do my job, and as long as I do it safely and do it productively, and I go home at the end of the day, I mean, they leave you alone basically.
Right. So that was one of the most satisfying things about your job, was your independence. What would you say was one of the most challenging parts of your job?
Changes in management, change in some of the stuff that the company tried to install, as far as I don't know if you want to say more, trying to watch over the employees to see what they're
surveillance
doing. Yeah, their cameras, that I mean, that stuff that's coming on now, cameras on the trucks,
right,
stuff like that.
They have GPS devices and things to track how much time you're idling and stuff in your truck, stuff like that.
Yeah, with the new trucks, yeah, they can get on the computer, and they can look and see exactly where you're at all times, and what your truck is doing. Yeah, exactly.
So did you ever have to handle grievances over those issues? Where they were saying, "Oh, we feel that you were at the Dewdrop Inn having a beer when you should have been on the way home from so and so," or
there has been some, where guys try to take advantage of the situation. Most of the time, I would say more guys going out of their way to take a longer route so they get more hours in, or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe a handful of times we had issues with the company getting on somebody about that.
Right. And as you think about the special skills or personal qualities that you develop to perform your job, it seems like certainly safety is at the core of what you do. Any other particular things that you skills or personal qualities you think made you good at your job?
Oh, I don't know. I just felt that, I had the mindset to to show up and, give the company an honest day's work,
Right.
with my mindset. And, that's kind of, like I said, some people don't look at it that way. They're in
Right.
it for the old buck.
Yeah.
And I've seen that change over time. It used to be, we had people lined up to work for Weyerhaeuser. You had to have 5 years of verifiable accident-free safe driving to even have the company look at you when we had
Right.
openings. And it's like, it's like, holy cow, can you push in a throttle?
Yeah.
The industry's changed and people have gotten away from this industry, and it's kind of sad. It really
Mhm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
The new people coming in aren't interested in, working a 10, 12-hour day and actually manual labor. They're, as I call it, an Eddie syndrome. They're holding out for a management position.
Right. So would you say there's a change in the kind of the ethic of the workforce?
Sure. There's,
Yeah.
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 There are still, we still have some longevity people out there, but most of the people coming in, they've most of their lives they've worked for contractors, and contractors, it's, you cut each other's throat to get what you can get.
Right.
And that's the mindset, getting those guys out of that mindset.
Right. Well, was your job at Weyerhaeuser your first union job?
Yes, it was.
And what did you think of the union when you first joined it?
They're taking my money.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. My dad was, my dad had been there for a long time, so I understood, that the union gives you the better opportunity. You get,
Right.
you get the better pay, you get the better benefits and stuff like that. So no, I went right in, and I didn't get directly involved in doing things right off the bat, but
Mm-hmm.
once I did, it was more people were dissatisfied with the people that were representing them more
Mm-hmm.
than stepping up, and saying, I want that position. It was more, hey, we want to get him out of there, and we think you'd do a good job. And so that was like in the early 90s, when after I'd been on log truck for a few years, and I kind of got involved. First step, of course, is becoming a steward,
Right.
and then from there on, you just get more involved.
So you
I
started as a steward and then became an executive board member, probably?
Yeah, I'm, I don't remember the timeline, but I think the first job I held, the president at that time, was one of the guys in logging. He was a hook tender, and Gary Loken. And
Yeah, he was the president of the local for a while, wasn't
yeah,
he?
yes.
Yeah.
And he's the one that kind of guided me
Right.
into doing more and more and more, getting more involved. And I think I was an auditor on the executive board, for several years before I moved up. I think I was a trustee for a while. And then of course there was, plans for this person to become this and this person to become that. And sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the president was kind of, I told him all along I didn't want it. And even though I was involved, and I believe I was the vice president at the time, I said, I'm more than happy to do what I'm doing, but I really didn't want to. I knew what the time was that involved in being president, because I watched Gary.
Right.
And you do your job, and the other guys go home, and he heads to the hall after he gets done working.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is. And the guy they were grooming to be the next president, when Gary was getting ready to retire, just last second, we call what go to the dark side. He went to management.
Yeah. Was that a big problem with your union activists, having good people in the union who went over to management?
We had a few.
Oh.
Sometimes I blame the upper union people for that, because they've been trying to advance.
Mm-hmm.
There's guys, that wanted to get to work at the district. They wanted to be business reps or
Right.
organize. They had the organizing position. We lost one of my quality um, e-board members to management because he just wasn't going to sit around. He wasn't going to be a worker. He was, he wanted something bigger and better, and he would have been an outstanding organizer.
Right.
He bilingual and stuff like that. So sometimes some guys slip through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go to management and figure out that wasn't for them and have come back.
Yeah. Right.
And so, it's just to each his own what everybody wants, but some people just have bigger, better things. And it's sad when those guys, get scarfed up by the company
Right.
instead of sticking in the union. So,
yeah. Well, I came to Oregon. I moved here from Minnesota just about the time that you took that job at Warehouser. I came in the fall of '85, and if I remember correctly, I think maybe Bob Fraser was the president of the local then, and then and Benny Youngren was out of that local, and then the other guy I remember, well, Sam Dominey, was he IWA? Sam,
yeah.
and there's one other guy, I can't remember who it was.
Lloyd Carver.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Those guys are all gone. No, I believe Bob is still alive. I
Yeah,
haven't seen him in ages, but
yeah, he's not doing well.
no.
I kind of heard he's going blind.
Oh, that's too bad. I interviewed him years ago, but that was after the '86 strike. Well, how did you look? What effect did it have on you and your family's life? What did the union wage mean to you back then? It was a lot more. It was, it was a family wage job.
Yeah.
How did that affect your family and your community back in '85? Let's say
Well,
before the strike, before you had to take a cut.
yeah, yeah, and it was from the job I had before. Of course, it was a significant pay increase,
Mm-hmm.
but after the strike, that was a big hit because I know exactly what I was making before. I was making 12.15 an hour,
Yeah.
setting, which was a pretty good wage.
Yeah.
In '85, and when we came back from strike, I went down to $9.08.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a significant hit, and more so for people that had worked there for years because they were accustomed to making that kind of money.
All right.
Wasn't so much me because I only been there 10, 11 months, but it still, was an impact on $3 an hour.
Yeah.
And so it really changed, the way things. Fortunately for me, my wife was self-employed. She had a home daycare business, and she just picked up extra kids.
Right.
And so that's, back then, people were always looking for daycare, and
Right.
so it was pretty easy for her just to pick up. And then that was the same thing when I went from the logging side of it to construction. The pay difference was quite a bit to go to dump truck, which was lower pay. But like I told my wife, I said I have to take a step backwards to get where the money is in log truck, because
Right.
of course, as you know, it's the overtime. That's why truck drivers made more money because the overtime was available.
So the difference in the rate between a dump truck driver and the log truck driver it wasn't so much in the hourly rate, it was in the amount of overtime that was available.
Right. Because on construction, you worked an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
And
right.
With log truck, it was, you could work whatever the Oregon state law allows you to.
Yeah.
And it was pretty significant amount of money compared to, what you could make on construction.
Right. Now, how would you describe your relationship with your coworkers and your bosses through the years?
For the most part, great. I've always got along with everybody. My dad instilled in me, and my mom, that you treat people the way you want to be treated. And so I've always had that mindset, management. Over the years, I've had good managers and I've had bad managers. But even with a bad manager, you have to, if you're going to be involved in the union side of it, you're representing your members.
Yeah.
You have to be able to coexist with management. So for the most part, I've gotten along great. In fact, the one person that last week I went out to, they took me out to breakfast on my last day and stuff. And the one person that I invited, I could have invited a bunch of other drivers or something like that. The one person I invited was my last manager that I had before he retired.
Right.
And so you get good working relationships with some, but the others, they're just, I don't know, working on the guys we got now, but I think they're going to be okay.
And how did you ever, as a union, as a shop steward, or as the president of the local or any other capacity, did you ever feel like you needed to mediate issues between members? Did that happen a lot?
Very, very few. We always were instructed that, issues between employees is the company's job.
Yeah.
It's, we're there to police the company and make sure that they abide by the contract. That's what we're there for. I have helped out in some cases, but that's basically management responsibility to take care of that.
Right. How about, has the warehouse or management changed over time, would you say?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Back in the day, back then, those guys in the beginning, it was more like a family business than it is, today. Today it's just, you're a number. They just scratch my number out the other day and they'll write a new one in. And
right.
Yeah, there'll be, some of the guys I'll say will miss that I'm not there. But some of them won't care.
Right.
But in the beginning, like I said, the superintendent, he knew my wife's name. He knew all my kids' names. They actually cared about you.
Yeah.
I don't feel that is significant that much anymore. Some managers still have that mentality, but for the most part now, they're hiring educated people that had never even know what a log truck is.
Never worked in the mill, or never worked on a crew, or driving a truck, or yeah.
Right. I mean, and the company said, by God, there isn't going to be any more managers coming out of the brush. Those are the best managers. They know the job. They know,
right.
They understand the system. You get these guys straight out of college and they get everything out of a book. And they're kind of switching back again right now. They went through a group of managers the last 2 or 3 years that they just, it's the my way or the highway attitude. And by God, I know more than you do. And those guys never work out because you got to coexist.
Yeah. Well, now let's, I want to talk a little bit about the 2 strikes you've been involved in, 86 and then just recently. You would have been pretty new on the job when the 86 strike, which lasted about 6 weeks, as I recall. Were you anxious about that when you guys went on strike in 86?
Sure. Of course, you don't know, but like I said, for me, I was new. I immediately went out. Of course, I was told by one of the managers, when we get out of this straight, you're not going to have a job anyway, because there's like me and 2 other guys that had been hired real close to each other. And they said, yeah, because we're going to be cutting way back, you won't have a job. I immediately went out and I got another job. So I had already planned that I was done.
Right.
And so I was working and I got the call from my boss, and he says, hey, I need you to be at work tomorrow. And I says, what for? Well, we need you. And I says, well, you told me you weren't going to need me. Well, the thing is, they had plans for this person and this person and this person to come back, and a lot of the people they wanted to stay left.
Right.
And so, yeah, they had to regroup, and And of course, even coming back at a $3 less wage, I was still making a little more than I was at my other job. But
Right. Well, let me ask you about
uh,
that decision to go back under that contract, because I know that must have been difficult. The company was threatening to permanently replace people.
yeah,
The unemployment rate was, I think it was 8 or 9%. That was a bad situation. Do you think people went back because they believed that Weyerhaeuser was going to replace everybody? Or
um,
were they just at the end of their ropes and needed to go back?
I probably a little of both.
Mhm.
The 6 weeks is a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah, back then, and yeah, they were threatening to replace it. They were.
yeah,
And so yeah, it was a difficult time. And and like you said, there wasn't I had, fortunately for me, I and some of the other guys did too. They found other jobs, but jobs were not that relevant to find at that time. So yeah, I think most guys were just, because with that many people leaving, the the yeah, everybody was out there looking for jobs.
yeah.
And so you had to be fortunate to get a different job.
And the strike that you just had was 4 weeks long? How long was the strike in 2022?
7.
So it was seven.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
so
were,
it was actually longer. Oh, okay.
yeah. By the
And
time said, it was 7 weeks.
how would you compare? Well, let me just ask you about the issues in this latest strike. Um, what were the most contentious issues for you this past year? Was it
Well,
about the cents per hour, or was it about the healthcare package, or um, what were the?
so during the last bargain, when we bargained in 18, um, halfway through the contract, we gave up our really good health care. But
The Nelson Trust? That
yes,
when
we
that
gave
went
up.
away? Yeah,
Yep. Then we went on to the Weyerhaeuser insurance plan. But at that time, they were putting money into the HSA accounts because that was a new thing.
yeah,
Um, and no premiums. We weren't paying any premiums. And that was, expected to continue on in this bargain. And of course, the company had other ideas with that. That was probably the biggest hang up for the employees because they came at us with percentages. And with percentages, as you know, the company, it's their plan. They can change the premiums whenever they want.
yeah,
And so it was the unknown expense for the medical, the shitty medical. I'll call it
yeah,
what it is.
right,
It's a medical plan is what it is. I mean, you got several thousands of dollars coming out of your pocket
yeah,
before you do anything. Where with the Nelson Trust, $500 and you're in, they're paying.
yeah.
And so that was probably the biggest item. The other item that was pretty significant, of course, was wages. Um, Man, I can't believe all these people keep calling me. Anyway, so it's
You're
just
still you're still the best guy to do the job.
still the press.
You don't want them to feel that way anymore, but that's the way they feel.
I am still the president until Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, the
But
phone's going to ring till Saturday. It'll ring afterwards too, because the
oh,
people who are there are going to want to know about something that you know.
oh, and I've told them, that I'm available. It's not like I'm going to fall off the planet. And Gary was, there for me when I took over, even though I grudgingly took over, but still there was, a lot I had to learn and stuff.
Yeah,
But the wages was another item because 3 of the previous 5 years we had created such great wealth for the company. We felt that we earned
yeah.
a pretty significant wage increase, and we did get more than we've ever gotten before. We got a
Mhm.
14% raise over the term of the contract, but we still felt that they owed us more.
Right.
Because the industry had caught up. Weyerhaeuser has always been the table setter when it comes to money. They've always set the table, even with the other companies, the other union companies, they would wait for us to settle our contracts, and then they would follow suit accordingly.
Mhm.
And this time, it was really, being on the bargaining team, and that's something that, changed with the 18 contract, where they actually involved the presidents of the local in the big table bargaining. And that, I felt that was significant. And this time we actually had other rank and file people involved in the big table too. I'm not, and so you get a lot of diverse people in there that for different parts of the operation, knowing what each, where things are lacking in pay and stuff like that. But we just felt that the company owed us, and when they came with their first, it wasn't last, best, and final. I can't remember how it was worded, but it was last and or best and last or where. No, it didn't have last. Anyway, when they came with the first proposal, the wages we felt were low. We were still 4 or 5 percentage points apart from what we were asking,
Mhm.
and they never moved from that figure. And that was one of the problems with the employees is the company just dialed in, this is what it's going to be, and they wouldn't move. That was what was so different from this contract, and anything in the past.
Mhm.
And it was really difficult for the employees to understand why they, after the year before was, almost $3 billion profit for the company, why they would be so stingy, I guess I would put it. And so the wages were a big thing. And then of course they knew there was things like vacation. They're behind the time. You don't hire a person and they only get 1 week vacation anymore. Everybody starts out with 2.
Yeah.
And so they knew they were going to have to change the scheduling for vacation, which they did. Well, if you're a 20-year employee, you get 5 weeks off and you get a 6-week pay. It's a bonus week of pay. They wanted to take that bonus week away from the senior people to help pay for the extra week for the junior people.
Ooh, there's a bad idea.
That was another item that was, a jab. Something
Did
else
they
that,
drop that in the end?
yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Through the term of the contract.
Yeah.
And then, so, at the end of this contract, it'd be back on and say, oh, so now you're wanting to already start bargaining on the next contract?
Yeah.
So they were putting some things in there. It's just like they said with the premiums for the insurance. They said, well, last contract we told you, we agreed that you were gonna start paying, and we said no. You guys agreed. We never agreed that we were going to start paying at the end of the contract.
Right.
And so, there was a lot of that jostling going back and forth, but those items were big. Getting the premiums for the healthcare locked in at a fixed rate was a big deal. I know our membership said hell no on paying premiums at all, and the vote was close. I mean, the vote that passed was close, and that was those people that said, we told you we were not going to pay for healthcare, and we're not.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the biggest thing. 14%, that's highest increase we've ever seen since I've worked here.
So the vote was really close?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And is that like, I don't want to make public anything like that you want to keep yourself? Is it public knowledge that it was a close vote?
Yeah, I think people knew. Yeah, we told them. We didn't numbers, but but it was.
So you had some division and opinion about how good a contract it was in the end. That's not unusual. Yeah. How did you feel about that as far as being the president and having to manage the different expectations of the membership? That's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's difficult because you're trying to get the best deal you can for everybody.
Yeah.
And you know, and in the end, and then there was, of course, one of the things that I've hated forever and ever and ever, since I've been president, or even when I wasn't president, was signing bonuses. I hate those
Uh-huh.
because the younger people see the money up front,
Yeah.
and they're trying to buy their vote. And
Yeah. Trying to buy
we
the
got,
contract.
yeah, so we got
Yeah.
a significant increase from their stand was 2,000. We were able to get that up to 3,000.
Mhm.
So we got another bit of money. You could either take it as a lump, or you could put it in your HSA, which for people that are going to continue working there, that would be the smartest thing because it's tax deferred. You know,
Right.
you're getting the $3,000. If you take the lump, like I did, you know, you get it taxed at
Right.
38% or whatever. But so there was a significant change, but you know, we don't feel that it would have happened if we didn't get the federal mediators involved.
Mhm.
The company still felt that we were bargaining in good faith. We didn't think we were. And so that was the big change, was we finally told them that, hey, we're gonna have to go to mediation because you guys haven't moved, we're done moving. And until something happens, we're staying out. And so that was pretty significant. A lot of, you know, a lot of frustration with members during the strike. Of course, I've been telling people for well over a year to get prepared because
Right.
it was leaning towards the fact that we could walk. And so a lot of people were not prepared financially. Um,
Yeah.
and there's no help out there. There is in Washington. That's the funny part about it is those guys were drawing unemployment in Washington. And
Oh, they had a different, yeah, they have a different provision in the law. There are very few states that have that, but
yeah,
yeah.
so those guys were very frustrated that it passed. Well, of course, you're not getting financially hit like we are in Oregon.
Right. And
And
so
then
that would be the locals in Washington, would that still be Aberdeen and
Longview,
yeah,
Raymond PL,
Raymond.
those
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they were known back in '86 as being kind of the militant locals,
yeah,
and it was said that Oregon was a bit more conservative.
yeah,
But
Longview's always been the big bad boys on the block. They
yeah.
don't like anything.
And now is Klamath Falls completely down now?
Yes, yes, there's nothing in Clinton. There's nothing Weyerhaeuser. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to kind of wrap up this thing about the strike, so you reflect on the two strikes in 2022 and 1986. Is there any, how would you compare those two experiences?
Um, well, I don't know if you can really compare them because they really had us by the balls in '86.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's funny because one of the old timers from the coast, that Dave Lemon, he's been here for a long time, and he stepped up to be the rep for those guys, and he was on the bargaining table and stuff. He'd ran into one of the old managers from back in the '86 days, and he told Dave, he says, you know, if you guys would have just held out 2 more weeks, you would have got what you wanted. And you know, you just don't know if that's true, but
Yeah.
why would he do that if it wasn't? You know, and the same thing now, you know, if we held out longer, could we have gotten them to, you know, to give, you just don't know.
Yeah, you'll never
So
know.
you'll never know, but
Yeah.
you try to do the best you can, get the best contract you can, and you move on from there. And then hopefully next time, we know, you know, we have, like you said, we haven't been on strike for 36 years.
Right.
We know that it's a possibility that it could be again and again and again. And
Mhm.
so, you know, as a union right now, the guy that's taking over for me, Kevin Lane out of Cottage Grove, um, we're already preparing now for 3.5 years from now.
Yeah.
Um,
What's Kevin's last name?
Kevin Lane,
Lane? Okay, he's out
yeah,
of Cottage Grove. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I got a few other questions for you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, it's actually just kind of a summary question. As you kind of reflect on your activities in the union and being in the industry, how would you kind of summarize your career as a log truck driver and a union official, and how important was the union has it been in your life?
Oh, it's been very important. You know, I've made a lot of great friends,
Mhm.
because of it. And it's even, you got your company side, your group there, but it's still on the union side of it too, because you still have your group, your core group of people that the 10 or 12 people that they all do everything for the union. That's kind of the way it's been. You got the same group of people that you always fall back on. In
Mhm.
fact, one of my board members that retired here a few years ago, who do you think was one of my biggest supporters on the strike line? It was him. I
Uh-huh.
mean, he's been retired. We had retirees come out and walk the line with us and stuff. So
Right.
that reflects on the camaraderie with the e-board and the stewards and the people that work together as a whole, um, representing the membership. And and
Mhm.
I instilled in, hopefully, in the people that are going to represent after I leave, the importance of keeping the union involved,
Yeah.
because it's been a long time since we've been able to, you know, actually add people to the union. Our local's been pretty well, what it is for a long, 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 long time. And right now we're in the process of bargaining one of Weyerhaeuser's facilities in Albany, the distribution center. And,
Mhm.
right now we're bargaining their first contract.
Right.
We tried to get Trust Joyce out here in Eugene. I just think we handled that campaign wrong. We had a core support group out there, but I think we tried moving too fast and relying on the committee too much to give us really the truth on what their numbers were.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, that was pretty sad when we didn't win
Yeah.
that campaign. We were hoping to get both those campaigns, but
Yeah. I've
you
been
know,
on the short end of that stick. I was an organizer in the garment industry, and I remember the first time a committee assured me that they had it
yeah,
wrapped up, and it was either bullshit or wishful thinking or both, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
that was a hard lesson.
and I think the committee was putting so much pressure on people that they just told them yes just to get
Yeah.
them to leave them alone.
Yeah. Just leave me alone.
Yeah.
A couple other last questions now. You're living in Eugene now. Did you also live in Springfield while you were working for Weyerhaeuser, or have you always lived in Eugene?
I've always lived in Eugene.
Okay. And if I were going to look I'd like to have another person from the industry to interview. I'm
Mhm.
wondering do you have any ideas for me? I mean, it would be really nice to have like a new member or
Mhm.
a more junior person, or maybe even woman in the mills, or to show how the workforce has changed. You have any ideas for me about who else I could maybe talk to?
Oh, let's see. Um, I don't know. There's a gal that works in Cottage Grove. She's actually a stacker operator. Amanda Hurley. Um, she may be interested. Trying to think of most of the we have two woman drivers, but they're fairly new. I don't know if they would be interested in talking. I mean, Kevin. I mean, he'd probably give you some good
Right.
insight on,
Uh-huh.
from. More than happy to give you his information, but um, yeah, um, I guess I.
Well, we'll give it a little thought. I'd like to send you, if it's okay, if you I can mail something to you at the union office or at your home, whichever you prefer. But first of all, I'd like to send you a couple things I've written about the IWA. And then I need to send you like a release to release the interview for me to use. So do you want me to send that to the union or to your home address?
You can just send it to the hall. Yeah, because
Okay.
I'm still, I'm still gonna be involved over
Okay.
there. I'm still the groundskeeper, I
Oh, all
didn't
right.
like
Okay.
people that would take care of the parking lot and
Yeah.
open the down and stuff, so I fired him, and so I guess it falls on me to take it over.
Uh,
Well, and
that's
that's,
better than dealing with an angry grievant, right?
yeah, I mean, that's another
Yeah.
thing, guys like me and Steve Delgado, my secretary treasurer, who's been there for 27 years, I think, has been the
Uh-huh.
secretary treasurer there. He and I, we do a lot of stuff down at the hall. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
said, those guys go home and I go to the hall, and a lot of times I'm down there on the weekends doing things and stuff. And so, sometimes it's a thankless job for some people, but when the members come up to you and say, hey, thanks. And even on the contract that we just negotiated, I had a
Mhm.
lot of guys come up to me and say, hey, thank you. And
Yeah.
if you get one or two people to do that, that makes it worth it.
Great. Well, that last kind of testament is a nice way for us to end the interview. That says a lot. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I wish you best of luck in your retirement. I'm going to mail this off to you now. If you think of any other people I might talk to, let me know. That now I can reach you again at the email that you're at your AOL.com email, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much.
You
And
bet.
yeah, good luck out there. See ya.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.